Your support keeps these stories alive. Like, subscribe, and ring the bell. I never wanted to be a parent. People used to say, you'll change your mind when you grow up. But the thing is, I did grow up, far too early in fact. My childhood wasn't just rough, it was a battlefield. The kind where you don't leave with scrapes or bruises, but with invisible scars you learn to keep hidden under work clothes and fake smiles. I saw what parenthood looked like in its ugliest, most selfish form: fathers who left, fathers who hurt, fathers who loved their power more than their kids, mothers too beaten down or broken to protect the people they brought into the world. I learned that being born didn't automatically make you wanted. By the time I turned 13, I had decided, no children. Not because I hated them, but because I refused to become them, my parents. Or worse, to create a child who would look at me with the same distrust I used to reserve for every adult in my life. I carried that decision like a shield, and it kept me safe. It gave me something to hold on to when the rest of my life felt out of control. When I first told people I was child-free, they'd laugh. "You're young. You'll see. Just wait until you meet the right person." But when I met the right person, it didn't change, it just got more complicated. I met him in 2019. Right before the world cracked open and spilled chaos everywhere. We met the old-fashioned way, through mutual friends, a lazy Saturday evening, wine in plastic cups, and conversation that drifted long after everyone else had fallen silent. He wasn't flashy. He didn't try to impress me with bravado or posture. He listened. He heard me, and when I said, "I don't want kids," he didn't blink. He nodded, said he felt the same, said he never saw himself as the father type either. And just like that, my defenses loosened. It was strange, really, to meet someone who didn't try to convince me otherwise, who didn't respond with, "But you'd make such a great mom." Someone who respected the boundary I had carved so deeply into my soul. We fell in love quickly, but not recklessly. It was a steady, intentional unfolding. Long walks, shared playlists, inside jokes that grew more ridiculous with time. He cooked, I cleaned. He'd bring me weird snacks he found at gas stations, and I'd write notes and hide them in his jacket pockets. We built a rhythm, a kind of safe, silly dance that made me forget how hard I used to keep my guard up. We got married in 2020, in the eye of a global storm. It wasn't the wedding I imagined as a kid, not that I had imagined much. Just us, a few close friends on Zoom, a park, some vows scribbled in a notebook. But it was enough. It felt real, solid, like maybe I had outrun my past, like maybe I didn't have to be afraid anymore. For a while, everything was easy. We had jobs that paid decently, no big debts, a small apartment that smelled like coffee and clean laundry. We laughed a lot, talked about traveling, adopted a cat with one eye and named her Clementine. We were a team, no pressure, no expectations. And then one evening, just a passing comment. He said, almost casually, while watching a sitcom where someone was holding a baby, "I always figured you change your mind someday." I paused, blinked, smiled, but with my mouth only. "What do you mean?" I asked, even though I already knew. He laughed softly. "I don't know, people evolve. I just figured maybe someday it'd happen for us." And just like that, my breath caught. A fault line opened where I thought bedrock had been. That night I couldn't sleep. His words kept playing in my head like static, not loud but constant. "I always figured you'd change your mind someday, not I hoped, not I wondered." No, he had assumed. Quietly, patiently, almost lovingly, but still assumed. It felt like a betrayal of the foundation we had built together. And maybe that sounds dramatic to someone on the outside. But to me, it was like discovering a crack in the glass you drink from every day and realizing it had always been there, you just hadn't looked closely enough. In the morning, I asked him directly, "Did you marry me expecting that I'd change who I am?" He looked surprised, then guilty, then defensive. "No," he said, "not expecting, just hopping." That word felt worse somehow. Hopping implied quiet disappointment. Like he'd been holding his breath for years, waiting for me to become someone I had never claimed to be. We didn't fight. We rarely did, that was part of our strength, I thought. But now, I realized maybe it was also a weakness because we let too many things go unsaid. We both valued peace so much that we sometimes chose silence over truth. After that conversation, a strange distance grew between us. Nothing obvious. He still kissed me goodnight, still asked if I wanted coffee in the morning, but sometimes I'd catch him looking at me when we passed a young couple with a stroller, not with resentment but with something close to grief. And I started asking myself the question I had buried deep. Did I change, or did he never really believe me in the first place? I replayed all those early conversations in my head. How I told him I didn't want kids, how he nodded. But did he really understand why? Did he see that my choice wasn't a phase or a wall I'd built to protect myself, but something deeper, a truth I had lived with since I was old enough to fear becoming a version of my parents? Or did he just wait? And if he'd been waiting for me to grow into someone else, how long would he keep waiting before realizing that version of me didn't exist? 2025 came in like a storm I couldn't escape. The world shifted, and not in the quiet, subtle way you sometimes feel beneath your feet, but in big, chaotic ways. Laws changed, rights eroded. The kind of news I used to scroll past in frustration suddenly became personal. And one morning, over coffee, I looked at my husband and said, "I'm getting an IUD." His reaction wasn't loud, just confused. "Wait, why?" I shrugged, "Because I want to be sure, because I have to be sure." He blinked, sighed, and then he said, "There's no way they're going to take away birth control, you're overreacting." That hit harder than it should have, not because he was trying to be cruel, but because it revealed how little he understood the weight I carried every day. The fear, the lack of control, the anger of having to plan my life like I was preparing for war when all I really wanted was peace. I told him it hurt, that dismissing my fear didn't make it disappear. To his credit, he listened, he apologized. But the moment lingered. Because the truth is, this wasn't just about politics. It was about my autonomy, my body, my final, unshakable answer. I wasn't unsure anymore. It wasn't trauma speaking or fear of work-life balance or a reaction to the headlines. It was me, unfiltered, steady, certain. I do not want to be a parent, ever. There was no pain in that realization, no heartbreak or panic, just calm, as if I'd finally let go of an expectation that was never mine to carry. And that calmness terrified him. Not because he wanted to control me, he wasn't that kind of man, but because he had been living with hope. Quiet, persistent hope that one day I'd wake up and say, "Okay, I'm ready." But I was. And I wouldn't be. We started having long talks in bed. The kind where you both lie flat on your backs, eyes on the ceiling, as if the truth might be easier to face when you're not looking at each other. No yelling, no accusations, just gentle, circling honesty. He said he still loved me, that hadn't changed. He said being with me, even without a child, was still the life he wanted. And I believed him. But I could also feel the weight in his voice, the silent ache of a man trying to swallow a dream. I asked him directly, one night, my voice quiet. "If I never change my mind, not in a year, not in 10, would you still choose this life?" He didn't answer right away, just stared into the dark. Eventually he whispered, "I think so, but I don't know." That sentence split something in me. Because I did know. I knew beyond a doubt that I couldn't be a mother, not in the way a child deserves, not even for him. So I did something that felt like betrayal and mercy all at once. I told him, "If you need that dream, I won't stand in your way, I'll let you go, I won't hate you for it." He turned toward me, eyes wet, shook his head. "No, I want you, not some hypothetical kid, you're my family." And for a moment I felt relief, gratitude. But it didn't last. Because deep down, I knew something he couldn't yet admit. He was grieving, quietly, softly but surely. And I had become the wall between him and a version of himself he hadn't yet let go of. The days kept going like they always do. We woke up at the same time, brushed our teeth side by side, shared coffee, swapped headlines, laughed at the cat's nonsense. We still kissed goodbye, still texted each other silly things in the middle of the workday, still curled up on the couch at night, half watching TV, half listening to each other's day. But something had changed. It wasn't something you'd see from the outside. It wasn't dramatic. There were no slammed doors, no stormouts, no icy glares. It was in the way our laughter felt just a second slower. In the way we'd both pause when we saw a baby in a commercial, then pretend we hadn't noticed. In the way he started getting quieter when we passed a playground. One night we were watching a movie, some indie drama with a couple trying to figure out parenthood. There was a scene where the father held his baby for the first time, tears in his eyes. I felt him stiffen next to me. I didn't say anything. I didn't have to. We both knew what he was thinking. And I hated that he couldn't say it out loud. I hated that I couldn't either. Because I loved him. God, I loved him. But love doesn't erase longing, it just wraps it in guilt. And we were both drowning in it, me for denying him something so deeply human, him for loving me anyway. He started staying up later than me. I'd go to bed alone and hear the faint hum of the TV downstairs. Sometimes I'd wake at 2 a.m. and find him scrolling his phone in the kitchen, dark circles under his eyes. We still touched, still held hands, still made love, but it started to feel like preservation, not passion, like we were clinging to something slowly slipping from our grip. And every time I looked at him, I wondered, was I stealing his future? Was he sacrificing something he could never get back? Were we both pretending this was sustainable because the alternative hurt too much? It happened on a Sunday. We were invited to a friend's barbecue, the kind where toddlers run through sprinklers and bobbies nap in shaded strollers while adults nurse beers and make jokes about sleep schedules. I almost didn't go. I had work to catch up on, a headache brewing, the usual excuses. But he wanted me there, needed me there, so I went. Everything felt normal at first. Laughter, grilled corn, someone's golden retriever running around stealing napkins, but then I saw him, my husband, standing across the yard holding our friend's baby girl. He was bouncing her gently, smiling down at her like the world had stopped. The baby giggled and grabbed at his nose. Something inside me cracked. I saw it clear as day what he would have looked like as a father, not just a good one, a great one, the way his face softened, the way his shoulders relaxed. The quiet joy, it wasn't a performance, it was him. And for the first time, I let myself imagine. What if I said yes? What if I pushed aside my truth just this once and gave him what he wanted? A baby. A family. A piece of himself that he could shape and love. But then I imagined the years after. The exhaustion, the resentment, the part of me that would wither under the weight of pretending. I imagined looking into the eyes of a child and seeing their need and knowing, truly knowing, that I could never meet it fully, not because I didn't care but because I never wanted to be there in the first place. And worse, I imagined looking at my husband and realizing he'd traded one dream for a hollow one. That night I told him everything. How I felt watching him with that baby. How I wanted, truly wanted, to give him what he longed for. But I couldn't. Not without lying to both of us. He didn't get angry. He just sat there quiet, his eyes rimmed with red. Then he said, almost in a whisper, I thought I could let go of it, but I don't know if I can. We sat in silence for a long time. Two people who loved each other deeply, but had just reached the end of a shared road. It wasn't immediate. We didn't pack bags the next day, we didn't sleep in separate beds. Life for a time kept its regular rhythm, meals shared, kisses exchanged, cat fed. But underneath that rhythm everything had shifted. We were no longer trying to fix something broken, we were trying to say goodbye to something beautiful that simply couldn't grow anymore. I remember the night we finally said it out loud. It was raining, not dramatically, just the soft kind that taps gently on windows and makes everything smell like earth. We were on the couch, both pretending to watch some forgettable documentary. The silence was louder than the audio. He turned to me and asked, if I stayed, would you always feel guilty? I didn't answer right away. Because I knew the answer, and it broke me. Yes, I whispered, and if I forced myself to become a mother, would you always wonder if I hated you for it? He closed his eyes, nodded, yes. That was it, that was our ending. Not a door slammed, not a scream, not even a tear at first. Just two people who realized with a kind of sacred clarity that love is not possession, that sometimes the kindest thing you can do is release someone to their truest path even if it doesn't run parallel to yours anymore. We didn't sleep that night, we talked, really talked. About everything, about how good it had been. About the inside jokes, the trips, the silly traditions we made up on Taco Tuesdays and horror movie Saturdays. About the version of us that would have grown old together if. We cried, but not the kind of crying that begs for a different outcome. The kind of crying that honors what was. The next morning he made me coffee. Same as always, but this time he added cinnamon, my favorite, even though he never remembered before. And I knew this was the last time we'd be us in the way we'd been. The apartment felt too quiet. Not right away. At first there was noise, boxes being packed, tape being pulled, drawers opened and then left halfway shut. We had decided he would move out. It wasn't about ownership or blame, it was about space, about starting over gently. He took only what was his, left the mug I always used, the hoodie I stole, even left a post-it on the fridge that said, "You made this place feel like home, don't forget that." And then he was gone. The first few days were surreal. I still moved through the house like he was just in the other room. I'd start to say something aloud, then remember no one was there to hear it. I caught myself making enough dinner for two. I reached for my phone to text him about a stupid meme and stopped midway. It was like learning how to live in a new skin, one I hadn't chosen but had to grow into. But there was no anger, no rage to distract me. Just love, still there, lingering in the air like the scent of his shampoo. It made things harder in some ways, because when there's no one to blame, your only option is to sit with the pain. I thought about what-ifs, about timelines that didn't happen. I imagined a version of me who had chosen differently. I even imagined the child, not in a regretful way but just to understand. Would I have loved them? Probably. Would I have lost myself? Definitely. One night I sat on the couch, our couch, still mine now, and let the silence stretch. And in that silence I finally said it out loud. We did the right thing. I said it not to convince myself but to honor the truth. Because love is not just who you stay with. It's also who you set free. It's been 6 months. 6 months of quiet mornings, learning how to cook for one again. 6 months of throwing out his old receipts I kept finding in coat pockets. 6 months of hearing songs we used to slow dance to and letting them play all the way through instead of skipping them like wounds. People ask me how I'm doing and I say, I'm okay. Because I am. Not ecstatic, not broken, just okay, which after everything feels like a kind of peace. There are still moments. Moments when I see a father playing with his toddler and I think that could have been him. Moments when I hear the door creak at night and my brain still expects him to walk in with a grin and a dumb story about something he saw on the way home. But mostly it's just life. Simple, quiet mine. I've started planting things on the balcony, basil, lavender, a tomato plant that seems determined to thrive. I've begun journaling again. I adopted a rescue dog. He snores louder than any grown man I've met and I love him fiercely. I even ran into my ex one day at a bookstore of all places. We talked. It wasn't weird, it wasn't sad. He told me he was doing okay, that he was seeing someone new, she wanted kids. And I smiled, a real one. Good, I said, I hope it works out. Because that's what I want for him. For both of us. We had something beautiful. We were brave enough to let it go. And now we're both free to find what we really need. This isn't the story I thought I'd be telling at this point in my life. But it's mine. And I've made peace with the ending. Because it gave me back myself.